Hello, everybody. Welcome to Era Stories. This is very exciting today. I'm really happy to be here today. We have a really exciting guest. I'm going to be talking with Robert Erdmann, who is really a phenomenal character in the fashion industry. He's been around for years, and he started photojournalism. He was a magazine editor, which is different than a stylist, and we'll talk about that. And I think you're going to enjoy today's outing. We did a really fun cover together when we worked together. I love this. Is one of my favorite covers of all time. And we'll talk about that experience and what it's like to work in Hollywood versus working in Europe. Robert's had one of those extraordinary careers where he's literally traveled the world. He's worked in Europe, he's worked in New York, he's worked in Hollywood. And I think it's great to be able to discover what's different about each photographer and why their careers are so important. And we'll have Robert with us in just 1 second. Are we going to have Robert? Yep. And he is coming on now, almost. Just 1 more second. 2 seconds. I'm in one place, he's in another place. The joy of technology in 2025 is kind of amazing. We got the lights. There we go. Hi. Ladies and gentlemen, Robert Erdmann.
Hi, how are you?
Welcome to Era Stories. This is very exciting.
It is. Nice to be here. Thank you.
So I was telling everybody a little bit about you, but how did you get started? What were your first inspirations?
So weirdly enough, it is weird that my grandmother loved photographs of our family, which was a ritual, which I completely forgot for a long time. So I don't know if there's something genetic in that. Or I don't know. It was a big deal when she'd bring out a camera. That was her major communication. I don't think I ever saw the photographs afterwards, but doesn't matter. I then went to Princeton University and I got a degree in the history of photography. And it was the head of the department was a man named Peter Bonnell, who was a curator at the Museum of Modern Art for photography. That was a highly interesting experience at a time when photographs were not considered fine art. So it was kind of it was kind of a new take on photographs. And one day, very quickly in this dark lecture hall on the big screen was a photograph by Avedon. I don't remember the photograph, but it was in the screen. And it was dismissed very quickly as that's a fashion photograph by someone named Richard Avedon, and we'll move on. And I thought, I don't want to move on. I quite like that. At the same time, there was a part of the degree that I was getting had to do with photography, and I worked under extraordinary photographers, mentors, teachers, taking photographs with a man named Mark Cohen, who was a highly New York kind of guy, which was really refreshing for me because it's not that way at all. And so I learned about taking photographs, and that's how I became interested in photography, not specifically photography yet.
But you didn't go into photography right after that. Didn't you work as a magazine editor after that, right?
No, I went to New York right away, and I just moved to New York because I was going to NYU Film School, I didn't stay there very long because I was kind of burnt out. But I had a job as a waiter in Soho, which was I needed money, and I remembered that Avedon picture, so I thought I'll just call up Avedon. And so I bought a magazine for the first time, and found the credit, which is in the gutter at the time, and called up his studio, and they said no, we're hiring Russia at the moment. I was like, oh, okay. So I had Vogue because I bought it to get his CV, and Deborah Turbo was one of the photographers in that issue, and I called her, and I ended up working with her. So
wow, so Deborah Turbo, that's amazing. I mean, and she is epic.
Yeah, she's amazing. And she'd been a fashion editor at Mademoiselle. That was her background. And I assisted her, and she said to me, "Oh, you can't be a fashion photographer, Robert. You don't know anything about fashion. You need to be a fashion editor." So I thought, okay. So eventually, I ended up kind of being an agent like very short. So I was an assistant. I worked with Helmut Newton, which was an extraordinary moment.
Tell us about that experience. I mean, what do you take away from learning from someone like Helmut Newton? I mean, it's endless.
But I wasn't tactical about what I was trying to accumulate some skills. I was kind of I literally just threw myself into one scenario after the next. It was a very civilized experience. He walked in with a bag, a light in it, a beautiful case, leather had light in it, and another beautiful camera case, all very small and discreet. He walked in on his own, and we did an ad for Chanel perfume, and quietly. I mean, I don't know. I mean, he was a real gentleman, and very young, so I thought it was quite funny.
I think that's an extraordinary point to bring up, because he was a real gentleman, and yet you were doing these, at the time, what were very kinky, for lack of a better word, photographs, and very sexualized photographs that really was very, very avant-garde at the time.
Yeah, so very shortly after that, we ended up working in Elsa Freir's apartment with girls who were nude, and they were it was like a nudist camp, in the sense, it's like a nudist camp. There was no, it wasn't lewd, it was about bodies.
It was the art.
It was, when I did Victoria's Secret years later, it came back at the time. Victoria's Secret was like that. It was really very empowered women, but had great bodies, but had great senses of humor, and really were very comfortable in their nakedness, and that was brilliant as well. So with Helmut, it was really, I think I just learned, I don't know what I learned. I think sometimes when you're the really talented, amazing photographer, it's almost like osmosis. You just become empowered by some force. That's a stupid thing to say, but it does feel like that. Yeah, so I just had a really good time with Helmut, and I really enjoyed the jobs, and because it was so new to me, I didn't have I had no idea of who he was, really. I did have a vague idea, but not enough. So I wasn't intimidated. I just walked in and had a really interesting time with him. I think it was about, I don't remember exactly how he told models to be. Remember the atmosphere, which was very and collaborative.
I think that's what I miss about those times the most. I think you really brought teams together, and people collaborated, and they enjoyed working together, and everybody had a similar vibe. As you say, it was kind of osmosis. Everybody kind of fed off each other.
Well, yeah, it was a very specific culture with Helmut. But it was a very there wasn't a lot of production. There weren't many production elements, actually. There weren't very many at all. It was just Helmut in a room in his friend Elsa's apartment, taking photographs on a balcony, her balcony. That was it. I mean, it wasn't very. It was an encounter that was just.
But the magic happens, you know. I mean, that's the interesting thing when you bring the right team of people and everybody has a similar or a curiosity and excitement to be there. Magic happens, fashion magic, really.
Yeah, it was. It was not a big deal of hair and makeup, though. It really wasn't in the ones that I was in. I don't even remember who did the hair and makeup for the Chanel ad, but it was. It was much more discreet. It was a much smaller industry at the time, really. So it wasn't very supercharged. I didn't know how else to put it. But so what Debbie said to me, which is, you don't know anything about fashion, you can't be a fashion photographer. Eventually, I ended up in a field with the editor-in-chief, the fashion director of Italian Vogue, because I was working with another photographer as an assistant, and I said, "Can I come and work for you?" Because Debbie said, "You need to work in a magazine." So I was like, "Oh, okay." So I was in a vineyard, and I'm like, "Can I work for you?" And I think I was just so like, she was completely perplexed. So she went, yeah, come in September.
And who was the editor? Who was the editor?
The woman, Lucia Raffaelli. It was pre-Franca days. I knew Franca. I met Franca, which at that time she was working at Lay as an editor.
So
I knew her then. But Lucia was from worked with people. I loved Lucia. She was a fantastic woman. So she was my. So I then ended up working for Vogue Promotion, Condé Nast Promotion, which meant I worked for as a stylist. Never having been a stylist, I was on my own, doing styling, everything from Vogue Bambini to the leather Vogue to the sailing Vogue to the, doing like knives and forks for Casa Vogue. It was a grueling experience. It was amazing. I used to go home, work all day, and go home and cry in the bathtub. Yeah, it was fun. It was fantastic. And then because the woman who was doing who I was replacing, as it turned out, temporarily, a woman on pregnancy leave because I was doing all the styling for Condé Nast Promotions. She came back. Lucia popped me into Italian Vogue, and then I worked as I found myself doing extraordinary circumstances, going home, crying in the bathtub again. So I worked with the beauty with Falsoni, and I remember the first job she said to me. I walked in her office. She went, "Blue, darling, blue," and I was like, "Oh, what do I do? Blue? That's all I get. I have to come back to pages of beauty." So I kind of figured blue eyeshadow and like blue, blue anything I could think of. So I learned that. Then I got sent off to work with Sarah Moon, who was hideous because she couldn't stand how young I looked, and that's a really important thing because I learned how when I worked as an editor, I had to come back with a brief, and I had to come back with pictures that fit the brief, and I had to come back with pictures that fit the profile of the magazine. So I got sent off with a suitcase, Paris, Milan, with Gianni Versace tulip dresses, like puffball dresses. They look like tulip upside down.
Yeah, remember those? Yes.
Diaphanous, and I got told movement and color, and Sarah really stabbed me in the back because I had no assistant by myself as an editor. I ended up in the ballet rehearsal rooms at the top of the Paris Opera, and I walked in sweating because I got up 150 million stairs, and she had mannequins. There were no models, and then took the pictures. And then when the photos arrived at Condé Nast Milan, they were black and white, and so
no color, no models.
It made me realize years later when I had a contact. I think that's why I was good at having a contact with magazine, because I had that scarring experience. Do what you're supposed to do, Robert. So, or Sarah, and she didn't. So, so I did that, and I then worked for Arthur and then I began to understand more about how to. I learned about the photography. So I'd worked with Helmut, and then I ended up working with Arthur Elgort.
Oh wow, that's amazing! I didn't realize that.
Which was really funny because Arthur was, so I'd been terrified by the bad experience of Sarah Moon, right? So I had to do an autumn beauty story with Helmut, with Arthur, and we were up in his apartment, and I had like big down coats with the girl. I don't know who it was, and actually it was a girl in Chelsea, and he had her lie down on his dining table because the light was raking through, right? So I was either giggling or crying. I was going to start sobbing any minute because I thought I'm going to get fired because I'm going to have a girl on a table. She's on a dining room table. I'm going to be fired. And that's where she was. The light, you didn't see the table. Then we went to another picture, which was a hair picture, and he had her. So he had a brilliant long corridor, which was where his washer dryer was, and light from behind, streaming from behind. So he said to Michelle, it's a brilliant thing. He said, like, go just take my drying, take stuff on the washing machine, put it in the dryer. And so she leaned over, right, and her hair went beautifully, and it was a very narrow depth of field, so everything was out of focus. It just looked like shape. But all I could do was see that Michelle was taking his laundry out, dirty, the wet clothes out of the washing machine. And I thought, I'm fired. So I learned about like how to get people into situations, make them laugh that were funny, and which were really smart, because the hair, when he said, get my laundry out, she went down to get it, and it was perfect. So
the magic happens.
Yeah.
It's very interesting because you worked with three completely different, three completely different photographers. When you think of Helmut Newton, Deborah Turbeville, and Arthur Elgor, they are literally each completely different.
They all empowered women. They all empowered women, one or the other, right? So, so that they were all very similar, because it didn't matter about what the photograph was. What I learned later was they all empowered women. They got women. They allowed women to be strong. I don't know. They were. Well, there were women in the Sarah Moon pictures. So that was a scarring experience for me. It was a terrible experience. And then like out on the beach. Anyway, so then after I did that for Italian Vogue, then I got asked to be high up at Roma Vogue. So I went to work for Roma Vogue, and then what was weird with that was that I worked with Bruce Weber when he was relatively new, and I was the same age as the models, so there was a complicity between me and the models, right? Like, and so, and we had this model called Frank Zarenko, and Frank, troublemaker. I loved Frank. We had two people. One was Jeff Aquilon, who I thought was really boring, and there was Frank Zarenko, who was really fun and like really naughty, which is great because it was kind of like each other while like I was dressed. And so Bruce kept saying, "You look great, Frank. You look great, Frank. You look so great, Frank. You look great, Frank." And it was driving me crazy. I thought, this is one more fucking time. So when we got back to the motel, because it was a motel then, there was no like, and I did the hair, by the way. Oh, that was really, I did the hair on Bruce Weber's, the shoots with Bruce Weber. Which was weird. It's a thing called 10X. And I was just like, I can't believe I did
10X, yes, absolutely 10X. That was the thing.
Oh, okay.
And Murray's pomade, 10X or Murray's pomade.
Yeah, but it was so weird because like I just like, so I was learning about hair while working with Bruce. So at Bruce, I went, Bruce, why do you have to keep saying you look great? You look great. And he said, because the more I say it, the greater they look, Robert. That's how I do it. I was like, oh, okay. So I learned that. So so that was how I learned about how was my skill set.
Well,
so it was.
Photographer, a big part of it is building a confidence and getting a model to feel comfortable to really let their sensuality come out, or their sophistication. It's really about getting them to emote a feeling and bring a feeling.
It's establishing a safe space for them to do what's best. And in terms of Arthur, it was to give them to kind of. He has a great sense of humor, so it just moved it forwards a lot. So yeah, I think it was about.
Arthur was about a great energy. Arthur was about a great energy, having the models dance and move and jump.
Also, I worked with another photographer named Bill King.
Oh yes.
That was my background in learning about studio, white background, and that was mental because it was everyone else was really working with Bill was like a whirlwind. I'm sure he will tell you that worked with him. There were white lines in the studio. You couldn't cross them. If you styled someone, you go. There was a white tape line. That was it. Do not pass that line. Which was so I was leaning up against the back. But in terms of like, so when I thought I had the picture, because again the model and I were the same age, so I was like, oh, this is going on forever, right? Because what Bill would do is more important than that, is that Bill would push people beyond when they went beyond their boundaries, where they just had no more inhibition. It was the exact opposite of Arthur, who was more like, through humor. Bill did it just through pushing and pushing.
Yeah,
pushing.
it was very intense working with him. Very, very intense.
Intense. So I remember one girl. I had to do a beauty story, and that was funny because like I had like because of my training at Princeton, I'd learned like kind of like figure out the scene. So I wanted to work with Bill King, so I managed to persuade my because I got yelled at. I had I to use Bill King, right? So I had this woman named mom named Esme, and it was like she was supposed to look like she was a marathon, and so I had yellow tape and I had like a marathon like these shorts and a top, and he made her run, smiling, 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 to the point of exhaustion. But in those last few frames, she was delirious and she just didn't hold back anything. So you got this incredible emotionality from her. He was also, and I learned about. He was actually. I learned a lot about him. I remember. Then I had another beauty store where I had this girl, and her name is Kelly Emberg, and I had taken tubes. It was a moisturizer picture. The idea of like clear tubes, you can see the bubbles in the, and then I got a garden gun and glued it to the tube. She was giving her shape, smiling, 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 until she finally burst into sobbing tears because it just took it all out of her.
He was relentless. He was relentless, but he knew what he wanted to get, and I think that's you as a photographer.
The models knew what he wanted, so they gave. They gave until it happened. Except when he had this. I was doing it, and then when I worked for him in Lomo Vogue, so I went. I don't know how. Like I did it more than once with him. Went from doing Vogue Italia with him to like Lomo Vogue fashion, and so I said to him at this point, I'd been working about a year. I'd done a year at Vogue Italia, and I'd done 4 or 6 months at Lomo Vogue, and I'd been that year, grueling year of being a stylist for doing all the motion. So I kind of was a little experienced, not really, but kind of thought I was, or I don't know, maybe because. Anyway, so I said to him, I went, I think we have the photo, and no one had ever said this before. He turned around and threw the camera at me, just threw it, and I just ducked, and then I think nothing. It was just hideous. I mean, it was quite funny, but it was like I was just like, oh. So, and it was like, and I ducked and hit the wall, and that was it. So, but it was frenzied anyway. Mom was frenzied with Bill.
It's so funny when we listen to kids now, and we listen to this generation, the newer generations, and they have such a. We took a lot. We took a lot in those generations. Like we gave and we gave and we gave, and it was like expected of you. It's so interesting now. I don't think half of these generations would have survived in that time because we were committed to it and you gave more.
Called microaggression, right? I was reading about it when I was coming here. I was like, microaggression. I don't know. The aggression I got was like so bad. It was like macro aggression, and I'm really glad I had it. I'm really glad I had it. So like it was always on set. Like the first time, so when I worked as a stylist with David Bailey, like I was warned he'll fuck with you, right? You just go along with it. He's going to mess with you, and that was okay. I'm like, oh, okay, because I was probably crying in the bathroom, like sobbing in the bathroom like before. And I got there, and I went, I'm Robert. And he went, are you a puff? I said to me, I went, oh, yeah. Oh, it's just it was just like, I mean, if you said that to someone now, you'd probably go to jail. I don't know. It's like
you get sued anyway. Here's an interesting thing. So you worked as an editor or a stylist. I don't think a lot of people really understand the difference between an editor and a stylist. So I could do it, but you tell us.
I don't know. An editor, it's a hierarchy, so you're protected. You have, to my mind, an editor is someone who works on the staff of a magazine or an entity. So basically, you're given different jobs, and you're expected to perform them, and you move up through the ranks, I guess. And then as a stylist, I think the word stylist is freelance. So you're brought in, and it's a whole different. A stylist is often, because they don't live in terror. of the chief fashion director, who can be a nightmare and hideous. They tend to have more. They have more free spirit, I think, and they tend to be. So I mean, Anna Coburn was a. So it's the thing. Who invented grunge? Was it Melanie Ford or was it Anna Coburn? So on the Anna Coburn camp. So and so we did freelance jobs, and then she do British Vogue, and what we would have done normally, or just whatever we decided to do, would get published, and then I was already working for British Vogue. And then she got hired for British Vogue, and we did this story, and we got called into Alex Schulman's office and yelled at, like the two of us. How could you do this? And in fact, it was a terrible thing. Anna and I started to giggle. I don't know, it's because of like being in school. I started giggling, and Anna started giggling, like, don't giggle, please, it's just trouble. And so I don't know, as my mind, have more free-spirited and more, and often more creative. Though celebrity styling is a whole different.
That's a whole nother thing. Because then you're beholden to the publicist, the celebrity, the photographer, the magazine.
Tend to be, so it's always like, fashion styles always seem to be, it's a weird division. It's like the photography, to my mind, is often, so you've got the gang, which is celebrity, hair, makeup, stylists, and they all walk in like, like, there's a photographer working with the magazine, and that's the other camp, which is, and then photography, you have to go to camps.
And so how did you transfer from stylist, editor, into being a photographer?
It's actually a really stupid story. I remember it. So I stopped working. Then I stopped with the Roma Vogue because the weird thing is I was getting to the point where I was like, oh, I'm about to be like a big deal here, and I don't want to do it. I'm scared. I was stupid, or maybe not. All I know is I had to keep going. I was going somewhere to do it. So I then worked. So I ended up in New York with this thick book of pictures that I'd done as a stylist, and I was asked to become the stylist at Bloomingdale's, and I decided not to. Who knows why? I was like, well, I want to do that. And I was kind of lost. And then I went to American Vogue, and they were like, oh, we're going to send you up to see Mr. Lieberman, who was the career director, the amazing Alex Lieberman.
Yes.
I remember kind of hanging out with him for a bit. It was like, these are astonishing. And so he made me see one. Went somewhere named Rochelle Udell, who was itself, and I was in a pickle. I didn't know what I was doing anymore. I was like, I've done a lot of pictures. I've done all this work, and I just told her a story of how I started. I wanted to be a photographer, and she went, Robert, go and be a photographer. That's what you wanted to do, and I was like, oh, okay, because I was just, and so I picked up a camera and took photographs, but I'd had all this experience. So, I was in New York. I stayed in New York for a bit, and I found this. Although it was quite tactical, I realized there was a gap in the market for like teenage photography, like from so there was a woman named Barbara Campbell. Her name was. She had a death on infants. It's quite funny, from infants to like toddlers. She just had a market, and she was quite cruel. Apparently, she used to like kids. I found it later. Nail their shoes into the studio floor and then pop the kids into the shoes, so they couldn't go anywhere.
I think there's laws against that now.
Against a lot of things now, which is one of the reasons things are kind of like lame. So and some are good, but I then ended up realizing that there was no one doing like 8-year-olds to 14-year-olds. So I ended up doing like a year of like I worked with Saks, I worked mostly newspaper ads, Bloomingdale's, and then I went to London.
And what year was this?
It was in the 80s. It would be
still in the 80s, okay.
And so I went to London, where I don't know why I met Terry Jones at IT, and who had been at British Vogue before, and I worked very incredible woman called Caroline Baker, who's the most extraordinary stylist, worked with me. I think because I had understood clothing, Debbie Turnbull, because I'd learned about clothing and I'd learned about models from like Bill, and Arthur, that those are the two. So I knew about clothing. I knew about how to communicate with the model. It turned in. I worked very quickly. I had done the right thing to get. So, I'm very happy and honored and blessed to work for the Face and ID. And then, weird enough, I didn't know why, I ended up quickly working for British Vogue as well, which is weird.
Who was the editor-in-chief at British Vogue then?
So it would have been B. Miller was the editor. So extraordinary B. Miller. Yeah, and so and then I started doing. Somehow they asked me to do Frankie Goes to Hollywood, and that turned into a big deal shoot.
Wow, that was a thing. Frankie Goes to Hollywood. Relax, get to it.
Successful. They were really fun, the guys. But I guess I'd learned somehow to get things out of people watching Bill do it, I suppose, and watching and it was amazing. There's certain things you hear or learn that empower you. So between Bill just pushing people over the edge till they actually were honest, and Bruce telling them they looked amazing, so they actually began to feel they looked amazing, which they did anyway, but made them believe it. I was able to work with celebrities early on. They weren't called celebrities; they were called musicians. I hate the word influencer as well. So anyway, so then I ended up doing that, and then it was a time when the Face and ID were looked at by New York, so I started shuttling back and forth between London and New York.
Well, you did an incredible cover, very historic cover of ID, I think, with Naomi, with the whole negative.
So Galliano, she was wearing Galliano, and so this, and also it was a much different time when the agents. There was a complicity between photographer and agent. So Beth Bloch called me and said, "This is a girl you have to see." And I was like, "Oh, okay, fine." And this girl, enchanting girl, came in giggling, could not stop giggling with spots all over her face. It was Naomi, and so I just so when you did covers for ID, you didn't know they were going to come out. It wasn't a spec, but it wasn't. So it was okay to photograph her for a cover, and it was in Galliano actually. When he had it was an early time for Galliano as well. So and that was that. So and then we did other things with it, and then I did her first Vogue story very shortly afterwards, because I was in that weird thing. I was doing the Cool magazine, and I was doing British Vogue, which was much more bourgeois. I mean, it was astonishingly looking, but not the same viewers for sure.
Well, you were a big deal by the mid-'80s. When I was in London, '85 was, I believe, John Galliano's first show out of St. Martin, and by that point, you were a big photographer in London.
Well, he did his. I wish I could find a copy of it. So we took some girl named Faith, who's terribly short, and we went, and a great hairdresser called Thomas McCarver, and we went out with Amanda Grieve, Lady Harlick now.
Yes.
And went to a field and stuck mud on the girl's head. You know what I mean? I wish I could find it. Anyway, so and it was a funny time. So Amanda was quite funny because she was working at Harper's Bazaar, Harper's and Queen at the time, and I was always nerdy. I was never cool. I was never cool in it. I was always I got myself in these amazing positions, but I was like, oh my God, what the fuck am I doing here? Oh, yeah.
And then go home and cry in the bathtub.
And Amanda, so we did some job for ID or some magazine like that, and and the embankment. So there's the Thames, and there's a sidewalk, and then there's bushes, and Amanda would dress the girl, and they go hide in the bushes. And I was like, Amanda, because I was always like, what the fuck's going on? I was like, Amanda, why are you in the bushes? She went, oh, because of Vanessa, who was the fashion director, was lived right there near Chino.
I'm here for
Hello,
I'm here for the
casting.
casting.
Are you casting?
Yeah.
Did you have your book?
Yeah, it's in my bag over there.
Okay, nice to see you.
How are you?
How are you? Oh, I just stepped on your foot. Sorry.
It's all right. It's
Sit down.
bad. It's the
Come
good
Come
foot.
here.
And there you go. I was trying to bring that all full circle because I knew he was coming.
We don't care about you anymore. We're talking. Hi, how are you?
Good. You look great.
You look pretty good yourself. How
You look fabulous. You've got long hair.
Yeah, I do.
It's the hazard of wearing black
It's really bad.
and white.
Yeah, it's terrible.
But at least we don't have dandruff.
No, we don't.
We don't have dandruff.
No,
We just have.
nice.
You look so good, man.
Oh yeah, I look different. I don't. Yeah, somehow.
You don't look any different. Not
I
to
don't?
me.
Oh.
Dude, this
We're
is.
just getting a hair campaign, right? The hair was good. The hair's working.
Actually, I was in photographs once. So I got my hair cut at Vidal Sassoon, which is like on right across from the hotel, like
Venal baboon, we used to call it.
Yeah, it was. You have to put it on the table because you're making it shake.
Oh, that's me. Okay, cool.
So yeah, so then you
I could have bought my own apple box.
Gift shake.
I just want to say one thing, ladies and gentlemen, Ben Shaw in the house. Hello.
Got a really good.
For those of you who don't know, you should know.
Yeah. So anyways, we're going to. I haven't been a model once my whole life. So I got my haircut at Vidal Sassoon, and they said to me, "Would you like? We'll give you like a free. Would you like a year haircut?" I was like, "Yeah." I was at university at the time, so I was commuting in from New Jersey, and so they went, we want you to be the model in a hair campaign. And I was like, oh. So I just remember the terror of being a photographer, and I was so frightened. I was just like, and there was wind blowing, and this like hair, and that was my only experience as a model. It was
But you were already
terrifying.
a photographer at that point.
No, I see. It's the first thing I ever did. It was be like terrified as a model. I never told anyone that.
That's good.
Yeah, I was on billboards all over Manhattan. That was really stupid. That's my modeling career.
It's kind of what's funny is it's kind of normal to be a bit threatened by it. Like the guys on the show, girls on the shows, like you're having the worst butterflies and everything. But when I texted you the other day and I said, "Hello, old friend."
Yeah.
That's about the development of it. That's what Philip. You develop a confidence and maybe you even felt nervous the first time you had a commission for photography.
Yeah.
The night before.
I still get nervous at times. I mean, if you don't get nervous, you're not.
It keeps you in check, right?
Passionate. I think the nervousness is part of the passion, and we're all overachievers. We all want to do our best job, and we're excited. We want to bring that energy. How did you switch to celebrity? So first of all, let's show up one of my favorite covers, which I just destroyed sitting on it.
Fine. It was we'll talk about it in a minute. We did the Valentino campaign together.
Oh, I guess we're not going to talk about that.
We did the Valentino campaign. There was all sorts of other people in it. Where we shot it, no recollection.
Oh, no recollection at all.
Like it must have been probably here in New York.
No, it was in London.
Would have been in London.
It was probably Lipstick Studios.
Maybe.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. So, anyway, so I've known. It's lovely to see. It's nice to see.
Go back to the 80s.
Yeah, we go way.
Well, that's what I was going to talk about before. I was saying you were a big deal by the mid '80s because Ben and Nick came in and Barry came in. We used to go on castings to you, and I wanted that job. You had the good jobs. We had fun.
Yeah.
I didn't know NADIA back then.
I did. Yeah, and I want to say that agents were very supportive, model agents were very supportive of photographers. It was a really, it was part of the community that there was you learned things from them. They gave you people. You were lucky you got and it was lovely. So your confidence, speaking of confidence, it grew because people let me work with you or suggested it, and they already probably had an idea. They already kind of figured out that two people might get along.
Right.
So,
I think that's very true.
Yeah, so I feel sorry for the solitary souls who are called influencers. I hate the word community. It's so lacking. So we came where I learned in that community at the time we worked.
And it was also a small community as well, wasn't it? I mean, it was a city, but the community of modeling compared to that, minute.
Anyway,
Well, and London had such a.
I remember when people go to New York. I remember, like, I used to work with. Yeah, I started Yasmin Laban's career because her agent called me and said, "This girl's so beautiful, no one will work with her." And I was like, "Oh God!" So she came in and we ended up doing British Vogue. Like, I got her to do British Vogue. But I remember there was a time when, like, someone would go to. So the only thing that existed was London in my. Yeah.
No, I think that's good. Yeah, I mean,
Not even that. Paris was scary, and New York was too far. And so people go to New York, like, so Yasmin went to New York, and she was staying there. Came back and go, oh my God, she's been to New York. She's been there for 6 months. It was like people just go back and forth a lot.
No, but
Let's discuss celebrities because we're going to wrap this up in a few minutes, and we haven't even talked about your career in LA and working with celebrities, which I started to go to.
your career is all about you.
Yeah, no, shut up. So anyway, go ahead. What do you want to ask? So where are we? Anyway, I ended up working very quickly, and I ended up working in. I realize now with working for ID and British Vogue was a very strange balancing act to do both. But then Terry Jones, who's the creative director, the deeply creative director of ID, had been at British Vogue before, did remarkable things in the 70s. So then what Face and ID were being. So I got flown into New York a lot and was totally intimidated because I was only used to lipstick studios and people like Ben who were really fun, and I was like it was work. I was like, ugh. In fact, some art director had to pull me aside and go, Robert, because I was so like shocked. He went, we are not the enemy. I was like, oh, okay. So I did that, and then I moved to Paris because, in fact, the models. What the weird thing about living in London was that the real models, you accepted, and a few others, but models would start in London and go to Paris because Paris. So the weird thing as well was often in London, what would happen is you'd book a model off a card, and they would take the first flight out of Paris, then the fog, and they would get to the studio around 11 o'clock, and they were fatter than you thought they were going to be. And they turned out to have terrible personalities. It was like, ugh.
So that wasn't Ben and I, for sure.
Yeah, no. So I moved to Paris because it was international. I ended up working for Paris Vogue, and I worked for. And I had a greater access for models, actually. That's what it was about. I was able to have the same models who took a plane to be late and everything else. They were easily accessible. So I lived in Paris and ended up, and then worked at a time when budget was better. So I remember the weird thing was like, I was on holiday in a place called L'Île Dieu, which is an island off the coast of Brittany. It was August. And I got a phone call, I don't know how they found me, but my agent said, Allure wants you to come to New York to do a job. And I'm on vacation. And they went, well, we'll make it. And I was like, okay. So in the bathroom crying, I was like, okay. But suddenly, like, a helicopter took me to Paris. Yeah, took me to Paris when I got put on
Concorde.
The Concorde. I was on the Concorde for like 6 pictures in Allure.
Damn, you was a big shot.
Crazy,
so,
man.
anyways, yeah, and that was like.
How did you get into celebrities, though, Robert? That's the question I'm trying to get to. How did you get to LA? How did you get to celebrities? We have about 3 minutes here.
Frankie Goes to Hollywood. I started the whole thing, and then doing Iggy Pop for for The Face, which is going to be at the National Portrait Gallery in a show called The Face. And so I kind of was, but I learned from Bill about how to get people to interact, and Arthur, I had a skill set of getting people to focus. It was very different though, because they were so sketchy, and also they didn't have a script in front of them. It was a nightmare. Still is, to be honest. A lot less. And so it was time to move again, and so I decided, rather than move to New York, where I kept on going on the plane. I thought, oh shit, I'll just go to Los Angeles. Like me, like in the vineyard. I'll work for you. So Herb had started working for European publications, and in a brief time,
Robert, we're going to lose the connection in a second, so you're going to have to come back and actually talk about the time working with celebrities in Hollywood, because we're going to talk about our cover.
Yeah.
But we're going to have to.
Yeah, we get cut off, and we didn't do this on purpose. We didn't do this like
No, we did do it on purpose. Actually, we did bring him in on purpose. Yes,
it just happened.
It's men in their 60s.
No, it's called style. When you have style from a long time ago,
exactly.
It's inherent in you.
Indeed, it is.
It is.
Indeed, it is. I'm so glad to see you, man.
Well, Ben and Robert, thank you. Ben, thanks for coming in today. And Ben just did a great show the other day for Loud strutting stuff. So, Robert, you're going to have to come back and we're going to have to talk about the Hollywood years. We just have too many good stories.
Yeah, okay. We'll do part 2. Very much, everybody. Yeah.
So let's thank everybody at Era Stories. We want to thank Nadia and Mohammed for making this happen. And come back and join us for the next Era Stories. Maybe Ben will be hosting and Joey Hunter. We got lots of great hosts and lots of great people to talk to. So come back and join us again on our next Era Stories.
We're modeling.
We'll model here. 1, 2, 3.
Yes, pose, strike a pose. Face.
No.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
See you, dude.